is the VOA Special English Economics Report. Many children first learn the value of money by receiving an allowance. The purpose is to let children learn from experience at an age when financial mistakes are not very costly. The amount of money that parents give to their children to spend as they wish differs from family to family. Timing is another consideration. Some children get a weekly allowance. Others get a monthly allowance. In any case, parents should make clear what, if anything, the child is expected to pay for with the money. At first, young children may spend all of their allowance soon after they receive it. If they do this, they will learn the hard way that spending must be done within a budget. Parents are usually advised not to offer more money until the next allowance. The object is to show young people that a budget demands choices between spending and saving. Older children may be responsible enough to save money for larger costs, like clothing or electronics. Many people who have written on the subject of allowances say it is not a good idea to pay your child for work around the home. These jobs are a normal part of family life. Paying children to do extra work around the house, however, can be useful. It can even provide an understanding of how a business works. Allowances give children a chance to experience the things they can do with money. They can share it in the form of gifts or giving to a good cause. They can spend it by buying things they want. Or they can save and maybe even invest it. Saving helps children understand that costly goals require sacrifice. You have to cut costs and plan for the future. Requiring children to save part of their allowance can also open the door to future saving and investing. Many banks offer services to help children and teenagers learn about personal finance. A savings account is an excellent way to learn about the power of compound interest. Compounding works by paying interest on interest. So, for example, $1 invested at 2% interest for 2 years will earn 2 cents in the first year. The second year, the money will earn 2% of $1.02, and so on. That may not seem like a lot, but over time, it adds up. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can learn more about economics with MP3s and transcripts of our programs at voaspecialenglish.com. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. Many children first learn the value of money by receiving an allowance. The purpose is to let children learn from experience at an age when financial mistakes are not very costly. The amount of money that parents give to their children to spend as they wish differs from family to family. Timing is another consideration. Some children get a weekly allowance. Others get a monthly allowance. In any case, parents should make clear what, if anything, the child is expected to pay for with the money. At first, young children may spend all of their allowances soon after they receive it. If they do this, they will learn the hard way that spending must be done within a budget. Parents are usually advised not to offer more money until the next allowance. The object is to show young people that a budget demands choices between spending and saving. Older children may be responsible enough to save money for larger costs, like clothing or electronics. Many people who have written on the subject of allowances say it is not a good idea to pay your child for work around the home. These jobs are a normal part of family life. Paying children to do extra work around the house, however, can be useful. It can even provide an understanding of how a business works. Allowances give children a chance to experience the things they can do with money. They can share it in the form of gifts or giving to a good cause. They can spend it by buying things they want, or they can save and maybe even invest it. Saving helps children understand that costly goals require sacrifice. You have to cut costs and plan for the future. Requiring children to save part of their allowance can also open the door to future saving and investing. Many banks offer services to help children and teenagers learn about personal finance. A savings account is an excellent way to learn about the power of compound interest. Compounding works by paying interest on interest. So, for example, $1 invested at 2% interest for 2 years will earn 2 cents in the first year. The second year, the money will earn 2% of $1.02, and so on. That may not seem like a lot, but over time, it adds up. And that's the VOA Special English Economics Report. We invite you to share your family stories about getting or giving an allowance. Write your comments at voaspecialenglish.com. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Persutti. This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. The best example of something is often called the gold standard. It sets the standard against which other things are measured. In economics, the term describes how major trading nations once used gold to set currency values and exchange rates. Many nations continued to use the gold standard until the last century. In the United States, people could exchange paper money for gold from the 1870s until 1933. Then President Richard Nixon finally disconnected the dollar from the value of gold in 1971. From time to time, some politicians call for a return to the gold standard. But in 1978, the International Monetary Fund ended an official gold price. The IMF also ended the required use of gold in transactions with its member countries. Since that time, gold prices have grown. But the growth was uneven. Prices, uncorrected for inflation, continue near record highs. Gold is trading above $1,600 an ounce. An ounce is about 28 grams. But people keep buying. Some people are called gold bugs. These are investors who say people should buy gold to protect against inflation. People have valued gold for thousands of years. The soft, dense metal polishes to a bright yellow shine and resists most chemical reactions. It makes a good material for money, political power, and more recently, electrical power. If you own a device like a mobile phone or a computer, you might own a little gold in the wiring. The gold standard was the subject of one of the best-known speeches in American political history. It took place at the 1896 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. William Jennings Bryan wanted the country to use both gold and silver as money. The idea was to devalue the dollar and make it easier for farmers to pay their debts. Bryan made this famous statement, "You shall not press down upon the brow of labor this crown of thorns. You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold." The speech made William Jennings Bryan famous. He was a presidential candidate 3 times, but he never won. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. For more news and information for people learning English, go to voaspecialenglish.com. You can find transcripts, MP3s, podcasts, and activities. You can also follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and iTunes at VOA Learning English. I'm Carolyn Presutti with the VOA Special English Economics Report. Unrest in North Africa and the Middle East pushed oil prices back into the news. Prices rose at their fastest level since 2008. Libya is not among the 10 largest oil exporters. But the rebellion against Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi reduced production, affecting the global market. In March, oil prices rose above $100 a barrel. Prices went above $145 a barrel in 2008. The price of oil affects prices and demand for energy, plastics, farm chemicals, and many other products made with petroleum. During the last week of February, Americans paid the second biggest weekly increase in gasoline prices in 20 years. The United States has a strategic petroleum reserve that contains more than 700 million barrels of oil. President Obama could use some of this emergency supply to help ease fuel prices. But intervening in the market could hurt oil production in the United States. Oil prices have been rising at a bad time, just as many economies have been recovering from the global recession. Also, several countries in the euro area are still struggling with debt crises. European Central Bank President Jean-Claude Trichet said in March that strong vigilance is needed to contain inflation. That could mean raising interest rates, which could hurt European countries heavily in debt. In the United States, higher fuel prices come just as General Motors and Chrysler show signs of recovery after their reorganizations. American car sales in February were 27% higher than last February. GM led all car makers with a 47% increase. High fuel prices reduced demand for big cars and trucks. But economist George Magliano says this time high prices may be good for car makers. He says with gasoline prices higher, some people might want to get a much more fuel-efficient vehicle. He says gasoline vehicles get 25 to 30% better mileage today than they did 3 or 4 years ago. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. Share your stories about what high fuel prices mean to you. You can comment at voaspecialenglish.com or on Facebook at VOA Learning English. You can also download podcasts on our website and watch videos on our YouTube channel at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. Dubai's recent debt problems have brought attention to the growth of Islamic finance. A government-owned group of companies, Dubai World, has been seeking to restructure $26 billion of debt. About $6 billion of it is in Islamic bonds, including a $3.5 billion bond set for repayment in December. The biggest difference between Western and Islamic finance involves beliefs about charging interest on borrowed money. In Islam, the basic idea is that you should not make money from money itself. Instead of interest, lenders charge fees. Giyaf Naqshbandi at American University in Washington is an expert on Islamic financing. He says the bank will estimate its costs based on its fixed costs, variable costs, the cost of their employees, the rent, and so on and so forth. And from that, they estimate how much they are going to charge. But he points out that this system can make Islamic financing costly. The costs of the system are shared by the borrowers. The fewer the borrowers, the more each has to pay. In many cases, Islamic financing requires the lender and borrower to share profits and losses. Giyaf Naqshbandi explains what that means with Islamic bonds, called sukuk. He says the bond holders are buying a share of a business or property. If business is good, then they could get back more than they expected. But if it fails, then there is no guarantee of repayment. Islamic bonds can be structured in different ways, but a major idea is shared profit and loss. Professor Naqshbandi says Islamic lending practices are also supposed to be socially responsible. In world banking, the total share of Islamic finance is less than 1%, but it is growing at a rate of 15 to 20% a year. There is growing interest in Islamic banking in the West. London is becoming a center of Islamic finance, and France recently proposed changes in finance laws to protect Islamic bondholders. Estimates differ, but as much as $1.5 trillion may be managed under Islamic rules. In 2008, the International Monetary Fund studied the financial security of Islamic banks It found that their lack of complex products like futures and derivatives limits the ability to spread risk. And that's the VOA Special English Economics Report.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. New research shows how a lack of money, food, or even time can affect decision-making and the ability to act. In the book, Scarcity, Why Having Too Little Means So Much, Professors Sendil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir examine the mental stress of dealing with a lack of something necessary. Sendil Mullainathan is an economist. He teaches at Harvard University in Massachusetts. Eldar Shafir teaches psychology at Princeton University in New Jersey. Their research combined theories from economics and psychology to explain behaviors. The two borrowed a word from digital technology to describe how thinking is harmed by scarcity. They use the word bandwidth to describe the ability of the mind to remember and plan. They say mental bandwidth decreases when people have too little. When mental energy is divided between worry and planning, planning is affected. One experiment in India tested the intelligence of farmers before and after the yearly harvest. Farmers scored higher after they had sold their crops. Worry over the lack of money before the harvest had temporarily decreased their intelligence. The two men experienced their own decreased bandwidth. They found that a lack of enough time affected their performance in all parts of their lives. Sendil Mullainathan was chosen for a MacArthur Genius Award, yet, he says, he found himself missing meetings, not answering emails, and forgetting to call his mother. Eldar Shafir says the research is meaningful for public policy. He says the condition of being poor or hungry or even too busy restricts the ability to think and act to make things better. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report in Special English. More and more British people are raising their own chickens. But these chicken owners have a real worry. What to do with their chickens when they go on vacation? A woman named Julie Smith has answered their prayers. She has opened a chicken hotel in the English countryside to take care of the birds when their owners are away. Julie Smith named her hotel the Fawlty Towers. The name is a play on words from the British television comedy about a hotel called Fawlty Towers. But Julie's hotel houses fowl, or chickens, and she wants to make sure they have a wonderful stay. She gives them lots of individual attention and feeds them fresh vegetables every day. She collects the eggs they lay and gives them to their owners when they return. She even takes the chickens for walks in her hen stroller. England has faced hard economic times during the global recession. Julie Smith feels lucky that she has been able to develop a business around her interest. Her specialized business has done well. She has 13 chickens of her own. They are commercial hens. That means she uses the eggs and sells them. Also, she knows she is providing a service for her community. Now, clients even come to her from outside the county of Kent, where she lives in southeastern England. Recently, she kept a woman's hens when she went into the hospital to have a baby. At night, the chickens stay in hen houses, but during the day, they can free range in a garden. But Julie Smith only takes hens, which are female birds. No male birds are allowed. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman. From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report in Special English. The World Economic Forum says the most likely risk facing the world over the next 10 years is a big difference between rich and poor. The estimate was made in a new report called the World Economic Forum's Global Risks 2013. Food availability and the spread of terrorism are noted every year, but new risks, especially technological and economic ones, are getting more attention. The report was based on surveys of more than 1,000 experts from around the world. They considered the likelihood and impact of risks should they become reality. Sharp income disparity was considered the most likely problem to take place in the next 10 years. This is the second straight year that a wealth gap was named. Next was what the report called chronic fiscal imbalances, or the failure of governments to deal with heavy debt over time. The risk said to have the biggest possible impact was a major failure in the world financial system, like the collapse of a top institution or currency. But experts rated a water supply crisis as second on the list of high-impact risks. How the experts changed their opinions is also something to note. This year, the mismanagement of the aging population moved from the 18th to the 5th most likely threat. The failure to deal with the costs and social issues involved with an aging population is now considered a risk with much greater potential impact. There were also extreme possibilities. The report called these X factors. They include the likelihood of our climate going out of control, and even the discovery of alien life. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Economics Report. Microfinance is a fast-growing part of the financial industry in many developing countries. Micro-lenders give small loans to poor people to start or expand businesses. Microcredit offers a chance to improve lives and reduce poverty. But officials in Andhra Pradesh in southern India are investigating whether debt collections are linked to a series of suicides among borrowers. Reddy Subramaniam is a rural development official in that state. He says many of these deaths happened immediately after the recovery agents of the microfinance institutions either visited the house or did something insulting. Reports of corruption and abuses have led to emergency measures in Andhra Pradesh to ban some collection methods. These rules also aim to limit costly fees and high interest rates on loans. The Asian Development Bank says microfinance institutions in the Asia-Pacific area charge interest of 30 to 70% a year. Charges can be even higher when other costs are added. But micro-lenders also face higher operating costs compared to traditional lenders. Groups like the Asian Development Bank oppose limits on interest rates because of these high business costs. Economist Muhammad Yunus won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for his work with microfinance. In the 1970s, he started what became the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. Grameen says it charges 20% for general loans, less for home and student loans. The poorest of the poor pay no interest. But enough microfinance borrowers are paying enough for their loans to create a profitable business. MF Transparency is an organization that works with microfinance lenders to make pricing policies more clear. The group is based in the United States. Chief Executive Chuck Waterfield says easy credit can lead some people to borrow more than they can repay. He says abuses affect only a small percentage of India's 50 million microfinance borrowers. India's biggest microfinance company is SKS Microfinance. In its latest budget year, it reported profits of 18%. SKS began selling stock on the Bombay Stock Exchange in August. New York University economist Jonathan Morduch says the microcredit industry is young and there are problems, but he says too much regulation could kill it. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. Indonesia has one of the world's fastest growing economies, expanding at a rate of 6% this year. Technology is helping fuel that growth and producing a new generation of young entrepreneurs. One of these technopreneurs is Nadim Makaram. He graduated from the Harvard Business School in Boston, Massachusetts. He returned home and launched Gojek. This service connects motorcycle taxis, called Ojeks, with people who need a ride or a delivery. Gojek uses online maps, mobile phones, and a call center. The aim is to improve Jakarta's disorganized motorcycle taxi system. Nadim Makaram says everything depends on a business plan. I firmly believe that business and just straight up rational business growth, profitable business growth, and social impact are not mutually exclusive. Gojek recently won $10,000 in a competition through the American State Department's Global Entrepreneurship Program. Indonesia is one of 5 countries in this program, which links startup businesses with investors. Many startups are internet-based services. Indonesia already has more than 700 startups online, and new ones are launched every week. Half of Indonesians still live on less than $2 a day. But Indonesia has a young population interested in trying new technology. Right now, about 45 million Indonesians, or only about 1 in 5, use the internet. But about half of those people use mobile devices to go online, and those numbers are only growing. Some experts say the conditions for local entrepreneurs are the best in the world. Still, the World Bank currently ranks Indonesia 121st.
This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. Recently, the United States Supreme Court decided a case on the property rights of inventors. The question was whether a business method is enough of an invention to receive a patent. Patents are a form of intellectual property. They give legal protections to individuals and companies against the copying of their inventions. Bernard Bilski and Rand Warsaw wanted to patent a method to let traders protect against the risk of price changes in energy markets. The United States Patent and Trademark Office said no. So the inventors went to court. Again, they were told no. Finally, the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. In June, all 9 justices said no. But they only said no to a patent in this case. Patent lawyer Meredith Martin Addy in Chicago explains that the court ruled narrowly. She said the Supreme Court held that there is no categorical rule denying patent protection for business method patents. When patent laws were first developed, most patents were for machines. But since the late 1990s, inventors of business methods and processes have increasingly sought patent protection. Bernard Bilski and Rand Warsaw brought a lawsuit against the Patent and Trademark Office. Technology companies, especially software makers, watched the case closely. They were concerned that the Supreme Court would require a test of some kind that could limit what can be patented. In its ruling, the court decided against the patent only because the idea was too abstract. Law professor Michael Moyer of Boston University gives a famous example from physics. It involves the relationship of energy, mass, and the speed of light, written as the letter c. He said, the Supreme Court has said, for example, If Albert Einstein determined that E equals mc squared, which he did, he never would have been able to get a patent on that. That's too abstract. In the Bilski case, the court said patent examiners could consider what is known as the machine or transformation test. This is the idea that a patent should be given to a machine or something that creates a material change, like a chemical process. But a majority of justices said patent examiners must also protect innovation. Patent lawyer Meredith Martin Addy says, no one wants to suppress creativity. Now, more cases will be needed to define the legal limits of business method patents. Such patents already exist. In March, for example, after re-examination, Amazon.com received a patent for its one-click ordering process. And that's the VOA Special English Economics Report.
This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. The Arab Spring in the Middle East and North Africa has raised hopes and dreams. But can it raise money to invest in a better future? How to respond to the Arab uprisings was a major question for world leaders at the Group of 8 meeting in France in late May. Earlier, the head of the World Bank said international support can speed progress, but only if coupled with real reform. President Obama discussed American development plans in his Middle East policy speech on May 19th. He said, the goal must be a model in which protectionism gives way to openness. The reins of commerce pass from the few to the many, and the economy generates jobs for the young. America's support for democracy will therefore be based on ensuring financial stability, promoting reform, and integrating competitive markets with each other and the global economy. And we are going to start with Tunisia and Egypt. Democracy protests in those two countries forced out their presidents early this year. The World Bank will offer Egypt $4.5 billion in loans over the next 2 years. The money would be part of a plan with the International Monetary Fund to help control Egypt's budget deficit. The goal is to improve the country's credit rating in order to ease the concerns of investors and reduce borrowing costs. About $2 billion in loans would be linked to progress in government reforms. The World Bank also promised at least $1 billion for Tunisia. 20 years ago, the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development was created to help former communist countries after the fall of the Soviet Union. Now, that bank could invest up to $3.5 billion in the Middle East and North Africa. About 400 million people live in those two areas. A majority are under the age of 30. The anger of the many educated but unemployed young people has been a driving force in the Arab Spring movement. Oil is the main export for many of the countries. Yet a recent World Bank study showed that oil has not done much to raise wages. Income growth continues to fall behind East Asia and South America. Private investment has been limited largely to the oil industry. There are some efforts to change that. In March, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton promised $2 billion through a government agency known as OPIC, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. The economic situation in Italy is worrying investors and may have cost its prime minister his job. Like Greece, Italy is facing pressure to make unpopular cuts in government spending. Silvio Berlusconi sought to enact measures meant to satisfy his country's creditors. On early November 8th, Mr. Berlusconi won a budget vote in Italy's lower house of parliament. But the prime minister lost something else. A majority of lawmakers in the lower house refused to vote. It appeared Mr. Berlusconi had lost their support. He announced that he would resign after Parliament passed budget-cutting measures. Italian government debt is about 120% the size of the country's economy. That is second only to Greece in Europe. Greece, Ireland, and Portugal have all required rescue loans to help them pay creditors. But unlike those nations, Italy has the third largest economy using the euro, and it is among the 10 largest economies in the world. On November 7th, European finance ministers met in Brussels to discuss the deepening debt crisis among nations using the euro. European Union Economic and Monetary Affairs Commissioner Olli Rehn said Italy needed to enact reforms. It is essential now that Italy will stick to its fiscal targets, ensure their implementation, and intensify the structural reforms that can boost growth and job creation. Italy recently faced an increase in borrowing costs that topped 7%. Unlike Greece, Italy's budget deficit is not out of control. Of greatest concern, however, is Italy's lack of growth and job creation. Financial officials and market watchers are also concerned that Italy's debt problems may be too big to solve for the 17 nations using the euro. European leaders have yet to agree on the size and conditions of a rescue fund or plan. In Brussels, Dutch Finance Minister Jan Kees de Jager said the rescue fund needed to be bigger. But he said budget reform of euro nations was important too. We have to increase the capacity of the emergency fund. That's very important, but it's not the only thing. Economic reforms and budget cuts in countries currently under attack of the financial markets are at least as important than more money in the emergency fund. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Special English is VOA's daily source of news and information for people learning English. Go to voaspecialenglish.com for transcripts and MP3s of our stories and for The Classroom, our e-learning platform. I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Education Report. The Southeast Asian English Olympics were held in February in Jakarta, Indonesia. High school and university students competed to demonstrate their English skills at the Anggrek campus of Binus University. The Bina Nusantara English Club at the university started the English Olympics in 2005. The yearly competition was formerly known as the Nationwide English Olympics. This year, the club invited other Southeast Asian schools to send ambassadors to join students from Indonesia. The organizers hoped to have 400 or more students take part. There were 6 areas of competition. One was based on Scrabble. This is the board game where players try to form words from letters with different point values. Other areas of the competition included speech, storytelling, and newscasting. Students were judged on their ability to present the news. Johannes Napis is the 20-year-old chief executive officer of the Olympics. He says the biggest event was the debate competition, which included international judges. He says the competition used the British parliamentary system, but debaters could use either British or American English. Organizers of the Southeast Asian English Olympics got support from the American Embassy in Jakarta and VOA. The finals took place February 19th in a new high-tech American Cultural Center called At America. It opened in December in the Pacific Place Mall in Jakarta. 100 Indonesian high school students came to the At America Center. They chose their favorite entry in the 6th area of competition, short movie making. But adult judges chose the winners of the gold, silver, and bronze medals. Johannes Napis says the Southeast Asian English Olympics might expand next year into the Asian English Olympics. He said people from Bangladesh and China wanted to take part in the Southeast Asian English Olympics, but they could not accept them. So, he thinks they have a good chance of expanding the competition into other parts of Asia next year. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Our programs are online with transcripts and MP3 files at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also comment on this and other stories. And you can find us on Facebook at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. The month of June means one more big test for many students finishing college, a test of the job market. Wish them luck. Americans aged 20 to 24 faced an unemployment rate in May of 14.7%. That was 5 percentage points higher than the national rate. The National Association of Colleges and Employers says about 1/4 of those who applied for a job have found one. The organization says that is up a little from last year. But the number is down sharply from 2007, the year before the financial crash. Josh Safran graduated from American University in Washington with a business degree. He is still looking for a job. He said, once you get noticed by a company, it gets a lot easier, but it's so hard to get noticed because there's so many people looking for so few jobs. One way to get noticed is through an internship program, says Reuben Smith Vaughn, another graduate of American University. Internships may offer little or no money, Some students even pay for them. But the National Association of Colleges and Employers says 92% of the employers it asked had plans to hire interns this year. The Occupational Outlook Handbook, published by the Labor Department, offers job market predictions through 2018. The highest growth is expected in biomedical engineering. 22-year-old Sarah Kramer just got her degree in biomedical engineering from Columbia University in New York. She found a job with a major consulting company in Washington. But her search was not easy. She said, "I started in August before my senior year, and I set up appointments with career services. I applied to about 150 jobs. I went on maybe 15 interviews." Ms. Kramer says many of her friends have not found jobs. Many have chosen to go to graduate school instead. But she has suggestions for students entering their final year of college who want a job when they graduate. She said, "Start early. Take advantage of your career services at your school as much as you can. And don't give up, and just keep applying to as many jobs as you can." Josh Safran says he may have to do what a growing number of recent college graduates are doing. He said, "Worst case scenario, if I don't find a job by the end of August, I move back with my parents." And that's the VOA Special English Economics Report.